Well, a new witness is expected to be called to the stand when the Senzo Meyiwa Murder Trial resumes in the High Court in Pretoria today. The defense counsels for the 5 accused concluded their cross-examination of state witness and Meyiwa's longtime friend Mthokozisi Thwala on Friday. 5 men are accused of killing the soccer star at the mother at a home in Vosloorus. This is, of course, the home of Kelly Khumalo's mother. This is in 2014. For more on this, we cross now to our senior reporter, Chriselda Lewis. Chriselda, a good morning to you. I think perhaps a quick recap of really how we ended the week last week.
Well, that's right, Naledi, as you indicated, Mthokozisi Thwala was a longtime friend of Senzo Meyiwa. The defense had basically wrapped up its cross-examination of him, focusing on quite a number of issues. For example, trying to poke holes in his testimony and what he told police in statements. One of the defense lawyers basically arguing or saying that Thwala, in a statement that he had deposed to police, did not mention this second shot or second gunshot that had gone off inside the house on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, but basically told this court that in total he had heard 2 gunshots go off on that evening, that they alleged that these 2 intruders went inside the house and had demanded cell phones and money as well. But while he, who was inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, Mthokozisi Thwala, of course, and others, they contend that there were intruders that came inside the house. One was carrying a gun and the other was carrying a knife. But the defense says there are basically no intruders inside the house on that day. Advocate Zandile Mshololo, for accused number 5, was one of those, who tried to address one of those aspects, in that she asked about this knife that the second suspect was carrying, and asked whether he could describe this knife, and he said that he couldn't. Advocate Zandile Mshololo says the reason why he can't describe that knife is basically because there was no second intruder. Remember, the first had been carrying a gun, demanding cell phones as well as money, according to what he told this court, and the second had been carrying a knife. You recall, Mthokozisi Thwala says after he had run out of the house and had jumped into the place of residence of the Ngaches, who are the next door neighbors to the Khumalos, he had been chased by the second intruder who was carrying this knife, and when asked to describe it, he could not do that. Advocate Zandile Mshololo says he simply cannot do this because he's fabricating a story. There were no intruders inside the house on the day that Senzo Meyiwa was killed, and that in fact some of the other defense contending that one of the people that was inside the house, including himself, Mthokozisi Thwala, should answer to who killed Senzo Meyiwa. I recall during the course of last week, one of the defense lawyers saying that in fact it is one of the people inside that house that could have shot Senzo Meyiwa. So, of course, we'd also seen Kelly Khumalo, who'd also been on the stand prior to that, and also 2 police officers who'd basically gone through the data on the cell phones that they had investigated. And of course, also on Friday, what we saw was the relationship between Senzo Meyiwa as well as Kelly Khumalo coming under scrutiny, when Advocate Zandile Mshololo had also asked Mthokozisi Thwala to describe what the relationship was like between the 2. Now, this was on the 26th of October 2014, or around that time. What was the relationship like between the 2? He didn't really at first want to delve too much into it, Naledi, saying that, because he was a very close friend of Mthokozisi Thwala, who of course is the wife of Senzo Meyiwa. And then of course Kelly Khumalo being the girlfriend. He said he was uncomfortable somewhat with even going to the Khumalos on the day that this incident had taken place, because it was well known amongst them as a group of friends that he was a very close friend, or in fact a childhood friend of Mthokozisi Thwala, and he felt uncomfortable going to the Khumalo house. But of course, he was also asked, you heard in testimony by Zandi Khumalo, where she said that Tumelo Madlala came to Johannesburg, who is also a Senzo Meyiwa's close friend and was also inside the house at the time that this incident took place. You'd recall that Zandi Khumalo said that Tumelo Madlala had come to Johannesburg to basically facilitate or be part of the lobola negotiations for Kelly Khumalo, as Senzo Meyiwa was going to go through this process. But this is something that was vehemently denied by Mthokozisi Thwala, who says, as a close friend of Meyiwa, he would have known if this process was going to take place. As far as he's aware, there were no lobola negotiations that were going to take place for Kelly Khumalo. And, he didn't say much, though, about the relationship, even going as far as even saying that his friend would often hide when he's with Kelly Khumalo, because obviously there was a well-known understanding that he was a very close friend of Mandisa at the time, and he says they still remain friends at this particular time. But last week, quite a lot of testimony, where, for example, the cell phone data analyst from the South African Police Service spoke about how accused number 5, Vosloorus, had called Kelly Khumalo twice. This was in the run-up to Senzo Meyiwa being shot dead. But holes were also poked in that testimony, lady, because you would recall, while the police officer who was on the stand, Lambertus Steyn, basically said that the number belonged to Vosloorus and had called Kelly Khumalo in August as well as October. And you'd recall, of course, that Senzo Meyiwa was shot on the 26th of October 2014. However, the lawyer representing accused number 5, that being Advocate Zandile Mshololo, poked holes in that testimony because she wanted to know then this number that police said was linked to her client, who is accused number 5, to whom was that cell phone or SIM card registered to? Because you obviously have to your SIM card when you get, that little SIM card. It's got to be registered in your name. You've got to produce your residence. You've got to produce your ID document or some form of identification. But it then turned out now, a concession that was made by the SABC cell phone data analyst, that in fact that number that he said had called Kelly Khumalo twice in the run-up to Senzo Meyiwa being killed was in fact not registered to accused number 5. So at this particular point, we're expecting a new witness, Naledi, to take the stand this morning. While I am not at liberty to say who that individual is until they take the stand this morning, sort of looking at the trajectory that the state is going in this particular direction, we are now on people that were inside the house. Mthokozisi Thwala, who finished in cross-examination on Friday last week, was inside the house. So the great expectation is that one of the other individuals that were inside the house at the time that Senzo Meyiwa was killed is likely to be called this morning. We'll have a name at 10 o'clock or as soon as the proceedings get underway.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that, Chriselda. And I think just lastly, before I let you go, there's obviously a lot of interest around whether or not we'll see Kelly Khumalo take the stand. Where is the court now in deciding if she will be called or not?
Well, look, Naledi, recall the state had indicated it does not plan to call Kelly Khumalo at this stage. Whether that is going to change, we do not know. But the defense is adamant that if the state does not call, so I suspect that when the state does decide to close its case, if it has not called Kelly Khumalo, the defense is well within its rights to bring an application to force her to come and testify in this matter. Look, we don't run issues pertaining to the courts on the court of public opinion, if I may say,
right.
But many questions are being raised at this particular point about why she was not being called. Well, we also heard from Mthokozisi Thwala, who's a very close friend of Senzo Meyiwa. You'd remember there were SMSs as well that were sent from Kelly Khumalo to her sister Zandi Khumalo that were also spoken about inside court, where she had expressed great frustration about this relationship that she was in, saying that she believed that there was a dark cloud being cast over her because she continues to be with this man. The SMSs, clarity perhaps on these so-called telephone calls that were made allegedly, with one of the accused. The issue pertaining to the relationship where, for example, her sister says that Tumelo Madlala was here, to be part of the lobola negotiations. Senzo Meyiwa's close friend says there's no such, none of that happened. Kelly Khumalo was certainly one of the people who was inside the house on the day that this was happened. So the defense believes that if the state has not called Kelly Khumalo by the time it closes its case, then it will be compelled to bring an application to force her to come to this court. But judging by what the state had said, it had said for now, it does not plan to call Kelly Khumalo. So let's see what happens. But if it doesn't, the defense is most definitely, most likely going to bring that application to have Kelly Khumalo brought up before this court, because they believe that given the fact that Senzo Meyiwa had gone to that house was on her account. There are so many things that had transpired. What happened at the hospital as well. We also heard from Mthokozisi Thwala, recall, and this was one of the issues that Advocate Zandile Mshololo had also brought up in her cross-examination of Thwala last week. You would recall, we were told by Colonel Lambertus Steyn that a SIM swap was done on Senzo Meyiwa's phone a day after he had been killed. Now, we are hearing from Mthokozisi Thwala that Kelly Khumalo, according to his version, was in possession of Senzo Meyiwa's ID up until the Tuesday after this incident. So Lambertus Steyn says a SIM swap was done on Meyiwa's phone a day after he was killed. We have Mthokozisi Thwala saying when he was phoned by Meyiwa's family, when they were asking for his ID, he then at some point had a conversation with Kelly Khumalo. He said that she didn't want to hand over the ID. He says up until the point she'd handed over that ID to the authorities, it had been in her possession. I'm not trying to draw any influence on that, but of course, that is testimony of Colonel Lambertus Steyn, who says that there was a SIM swap done, and of course Mthokozisi Thwala, who says the ID had been in the possession of Kelly Khumalo up until the Tuesday after the incident. So a very interesting testimony we're expecting today, likely from someone inside the house.